Hi, Misha.
And this is Jay.
And it's time for another Q&A. And since we did our last one, there have been a few guns come out for once. 2020 ended a bit with a bang, or 2021 kind of came in with one. We had the Mini Baril, we had the 5.52 here, we had the PE90s. A few neat things kind of finally came in.
Yeah, for sure.
So it seemed like a good time to do it. And we have a few questions here. A bucking up with Patreon donation. You can ask as many questions as you want, and we get around to them every 2, 3, 4 months, depending on the time interval with the holidays. $5 and up, you can do a video request and ask questions, and $10 and up, you basically get a direct line to either catch us via email or, if necessary, the phone. If you have a question about a gun that's kind of time sensitive or whatever.
Yep.
Or if you just want to talk about cats or dogs.
And we will always send a link out ahead of time. There will be a link that's kind of dedicated, so as people get questions and ask, they can go post them up in there, and then whenever we do the next Q&A, we'll have a bank of them to read through. The last one we posted up was on December 12th, so it's been right at 2 months, a little under 2 months. So there will be a new thread that will already be posted. So if you want to go post new questions, if you missed this one this time around, we'll record another one in around 6 or 8 weeks. So we'll go ahead and just get started then.
Yep, let's go and get into it.
So James says, "Hi Misha and Jay, I got 3 questions for you. 1, what's your guys' thoughts for best revolver of World War I?
You're a revolver guy now.
I am, but not really a historical revolver guy. I think you're going to say the Gasser, aren't you?
Yeah. I actually really think that's a cool gun.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, it wasn't the Reich's revolver.
Oh, yeah.
I would honestly say
The Dardic. No, that was
I would honestly say probably the U.S. 1917, specifically the Smith & Wesson.
Yep.
I think the Smith's a little better than the Colt because it had the head spacing and the cylinder. Not all Colts did. I love the Webley. It's probably my favorite.
Yeah.
But as far as quality, those 1917s were built to last.
Yeah. I don't unfortunately know enough about the historical ones to be able to speak to which one I think is the best. I can only speak to ones that I like, and yeah, that 1917 is definitely way up there, as is the Webley for me.
Yeah.
In terms of just ones that I just like for whatever reason. So
yeah.
Question number 2 is thoughts on the Manticore Arms Chinese side-folding stock. So I went and looked at, we had never even heard of this before this question, so I went and looked at pictures. It looks good. Manticore makes typically pretty good stuff, so not having actual hands-on experience with the specific stock that you're asking about, for whatever reason that you might need one, it seems like it would be a fine option.
Yeah, maybe like for a Mac 90, if you're getting rid of the Gorilla thumbhold stock, it might be cool to put, or anything really, but...
Yeah, they're definitely unique. If you want a unique look, if for some reason you like the look of that, to throw on an AK.
I will say that, I don't know if it's probably longer than the original, but on the original Chinese, it is a short length of pull. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine for a US copy, they stretched it a bit. But if it's the same length of pull as the original, no, it is pretty short.
Yeah. And the third question is, what firearm were you initially dismissive of, but upon seeing the ease of manufacturing, parameters of use, made you change your mind?
What do you think?
That's so, kind of... double checking the camera here, just make sure everything's running right. We're all good. I think the FAL, actually.
Really? Yeah. Your early experiences with FALs
were... And I've still even had some mixed experiences with them since then. But, I got a loaner. It was it was really a gift. CAI Sporter. What did they call those? STG Sporter or something? They called them something specifically. The
one that was an L. They called them either L1A1 Sporter or R1A1 Sporter.
Okay. So it was an L1A1 Sporter that had the thumbhole stock and everything, and I bought some surplus furniture and kind of my first refinishing deal that I ever did. But tearing down that gun and seeing how all the parts made it together, how the disassembly and machining worked and everything, gave me a real appreciation for that rifle that I did not have until I actually went and tore it down. So I think that was probably the first thing that stuck into my mind for guns that I kind of wrote off initially until I got hands-on with them.
I would actually say maybe the one I'm holding now, or at least one in the class, because like a lot of us, I didn't have a pre-ban 5.50 type gun, but when the U.S. ones came out around 2006, I was initially interested, but then all the mixed online things and the funky lower and the handguards they did kind of turned me off and made me go, eh. So it took me a few years to warm up and really, really get into them. But yeah, like you said, by building it and talking with people, like for example, an early source of great info was Colorado Gun Sales, because the owner was once an engineer over there. Anyway, I really got a lot of hands-on experience. In fact, that was maybe the first gun I ever changed gas blocks on myself.
Yeah.
And I really, obviously, as you know today, came to love it. I'm confident with it, working on them and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Cody says, Misha and Jay, of all the AKs excluding automatics, of course, what would you consider to be your holy grail AK? And of guns in general, what would be your holy grail gun for each of you and why? So, for AKs, I happen to have at hand a mini barrel. This is a gun that I really didn't think I'd ever be able to get for various reasons, and they kind of surprised us and snuck in, and I really am glad I get to have one of these in my collection. I am a Polish collector, and this original FB Radom barrels have been few and far between in the country, so this has been, at least over the last few years, the one that I really wanted and didn't think I would be able to get. I kind of just doubted they'd ever really make it into the country. There has been a lot of fracas with Radom USA and all that stuff that just never seemed to materialize.
And there was a lot of stuff over there, but there was even more stuff with the importing company here, and then of course COVID, and it seemed like every step of the way something got thrown. But that's what to be. Credit has to be given to the dedication of the folks at Arms of America, Atlantic, and FB. The FB really does want the American market. So the fact that really, because none of the partners gave up, is why they happened.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking white whale stuff, not that I have one, but an AK-107 or AK-108 clone in semi-auto from the Russian, one of the balancing bolt guns. I've always thought that would be neat to have.
Yeah.
Like the AN-94 is not really an AK anyway. It's too fancy. It's too lit. But the AK-107, 108, they're just neat. They're still AKs, but mechanically different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
In terms of non-AKs, I did a video on it here just within the last few weeks, by the time you're seeing this, on the Swiss PE90 that I have, and was able to get recently. That was probably my last white whale gun that I've wanted to get. There are some that I've kind of written off as never being able to get, like an MG42 or an original Thompson submachine gun. But that one, as far as semi-auto able to get in the civilian market, was the last one that I had. So
yeah, I would say for me, the MP44. I mean, it was hard enough to get a PTR 44, but to get an original, that was.
Yeah.
That was good karma there, because the person that came from basically set me up because I had done him a favor. So that was, and I did him the favor years earlier, not ever expecting. It wasn't one of those types of, but yeah, he kind of got me back on that, and I never thought I'd have an original. Like the PTR 44 was, yeah.
Mr. Bank Fisherman says, I'm going to SBR my Zastava PAP 92 and want to put a wood stock on it. Any idea where I can find a wood stock or have one made?
I mean, there's tons of Yugo surplus stocks out there, and you can refinish them.
Yeah, so Blake suggested you'll likely need a standard Yugo fixed rear trunnion installed, and stocks can be found online, and posted a link for you there.
Yeah, and there's U.S. companies that make stocks now for compliance, 922R.
Sure.
Ironwood is always a solid one. Yeah, they're expensive, but they're hardwood. They're not like the popsicle wood that Century Arms uses.
Yeah.
You can actually see me beat up and destroy a Century Arms U.S. stock on my personal channel that I did a year or two ago. I was really bored.
That's right. That was a very fun video, though.
You have no idea.
Clark from Wyoming says, can you speak to the import price / history of Russian ammo in the U.S.? Since the import of Chinese ammo was banned in '94, how long did it take for Russian manufacturing to fill the demand? And do you know how the AK for market The market for AK ammo reacted in the meantime. Also, in the event that Russian-made ammo becomes difficult or impossible to obtain in the next few years, for whatever reason, which country do you think is best poised to fill the niche in the market for Kalashnikov gravel pit fodder?
Okay, here's the thing. When Chinese stuff was sanctioned in 94, the AK market was 12 people and a chimpanzee. It was a small, in fact, the whole, we'll call them Evil Black Rifle or MSR, right? It was tiny.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that people make a lot of comparisons to like the 89 ban to nowadays in terms of people not putting up a fight against gun control and all that stuff. But the market is super different now than what it was.
Absolutely.
Like, I didn't know anybody that had an AR-15 when I was a kid.
My dad did, and that was special. Like that, and it was kept under the bed. Like it was, that was a unique thing.
Yeah, you had hunting rifles, and that was pretty much, or a shotgun or two, and that was pretty much it.
And if you wanted an AR, there were a few fly-by-night companies in the 80s and early 90s, but you pretty much had Colt. Yeah. And if you didn't want an AR, you had like the AR 180. But the guys, the pre-banned guns that you're all thinking, FNCs, AR-70s, those were really expensive in the 80s. You think they're high now, but when you adjust for inflation, they weren't a whole lot cheaper back then.
Yep.
And people didn't spend money like gun collecting before then. The internet has really inspired collecting of all types. So, yeah, it just wasn't a thing. Now, Russian ammo started coming in pretty early on, kind of like with the early SVDs and stuff. It was there. I remember buying Wolf in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially when I got my SAR2. Mm-hmm. So it was there by the turn of the millennium, but it wasn't a big deal. You have to remember, too, that those were early days of the internet. So the ammo might have been in more populous states early on, but not here in Arkansas.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter because it's a different world all around.
Yeah, I think as far as countries that are best poised, I mean, we saw Romanian ammo being imported under the Red Army Standard brand. So there are just so few. If we're talking about AK ammo in terms of 7.62 by 39 and 5.45, there are so few countries that use 5.45.
Yeah.
That would be the more difficult void to fill, I think.
Poland's not going to do it.
No.
Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, today Serbia, never did it. China only did it for export. Yeah, Romania is really the only other user. There's Ukraine, but getting stuff out of Ukraine after, the last 10 years of history is almost as difficult as getting stuff out of Russia. And the problem with Ukraine, they can't even produce enough ammo for their own military, really, truth be told. They do not have excess capacity to produce for us anyway.
Yeah. The short answer probably is the U.S. market.
Yeah, I think that's, once you tack on tariffs and transports, the problem with Romanian is quality control.
Yeah.
I
never had great luck with the Red Army Standard stuff, but that's also possible that, it was a very limited time thing, and I think it was being brought in through Century.
It was,
so
yeah.
It's possible that would improve with time. But
Israel would be not a bad source, maybe like 7.6239. They tend to get into the competitive market. They've done a lot of accessories, they did the. And I wish I could say Turkey. They did really well with the ZQI stuff for like 308, but
yeah.
The Turkish situation's unstable at the moment.
Yeah. So we need Nicolas Cage. That's what you're saying. We need Nicolas Cage to start making.
Right. Need, yeah. We don't have. We need.
Mike F. says, what do you think is the time for me to have to pony up for a CZ Bren 2 BR?
They're not out yet, and I don't know of any forecast for them being out. If he's asking when they're going to come, I don't think anyone knows.
Yeah. So talk sometime after they come out.
Yeah. I think most companies kind of put new projects on the back burner last year because of 2020 and everything. I don't know when they'll get back because they can't even meet demand for current projects. So this isn't the time for new stuff. And 308 rifles sell slower than 5.56, 7.62 39. They always have.
We're bad people to ask about this because I think we tend to be early adopters on imports. Because we managed to get the Bren 2S. Like we bought the ARX fairly early on. We bought the original Bren, the 805, fairly early on. So, and the Scorpion fairly early on. Probably ended up paying more. I know I ended up paying more than
Yeah.
what I needed to on the Scorpion just to get one. So we're probably bad people to be giving you advice for that, because our advice would be like, well, as soon as they come out, buy one.
I mean,
As long as you don't end up buying one off on the second hand from somebody for like twice the retail price.
Yeah. Yeah, don't buy someone else's problem.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Dave says, who does the camera work for the channel and OBA, both Jay and Misha? Someone behind the scenes, trained feline videographers?
Yes.
That's the last one.
I mean, 2020, I mean, we pretty much recorded our own videos because separation. Prior to that, a few different people. Like on range days, it's usually herein, but...
Yeah, we just trade off. I record my videos here in this studio. It's really my workshop. And I just set up a tripod and record. And then if we're at the range together, we just take turns. Whoever's shooting shoots, and whoever's recording holds the camera. So.
Yep, and again with the quarantine stuff, and
You've got some people that come over and will record table talk videos every once in a while, though.
It hasn't been in a while because one of them moved away and the other one can't sit still.
Yeah.
So I haven't actually. It's either been you or I for probably the last year.
Yeah. Scott says, "Hey Jane Misha, so I ended up buying an unfired SA-93 today. What has to be done to put a regular stock on it and get rid of the thumbhole stock? Thanks."
Not much. Pull the thumbhole off. You'll need a pistol grip and a grip screw. You probably want to get a long one because it's a milled receiver, and I like the long ones because you get a good bite. And you'll need to install a lower tang, but that's not a big deal. You can buy the tangs, and they even come with the correct rivets from K-Bar. They still have them. So you just put it in there and then crush the rivets, and you're good to go. The top tang is already there. You'll just need a Type 3 style milled stock. You know, I put the Bulgarian salmon one on mine, as it's called, the pink one, or the bakelite as some call it, but you can put a wood one on. So it's pretty straightforward. You just need to crush a couple of small rivets to get your lower tang in there.
Yeah. We're about halfway through, so we're going to take a short break, make sure all the recording is coming through okay, and we'll be right back.
And we're back, and Jay let the dogs out.
Yep. So that answers that question. Alrighty. Blake says, "Hey Misha and Jay, love the show." Hey, we have a show. Do you know we had a show?
No.
Somebody, yeah.
I thought this was a fever dream.
Can't wait till we start getting checks cut. Please help with my recent frustration. I've been finding myself having to defend old and new Zastava guns incessantly from the claims that they're all crap because of quote-unquote soft receivers. I even got banned from an AK Facebook group for simply saying we don't know how many batches and which guns were affected. I totally get that some quantities of NPAPs, M92s, and even OPAPs had some hardness issues. However, the claims by many these days is that even the newer imports are often a crapshoot, but no one has offered a body of evidence of how many, which models, which years, etc. were affected. Are you seeing the same things? I work in medicine, so reading a bunch of hard claims with no evidence is extremely frustrating. Curious to get your thoughts about what could be done to put this to rest, whether it's true or not. Maybe better marketing from Zastava. Could distributors around the USA do hardness checks on X number of guns to provide some data? Thanks, Blake.
Honestly, welcome to the AK market. The Wassers suffered from it for a long time. Before that, Chinese guns. There's nothing. I will say this. There are obviously more remain, but there are tens of thousands now, probably hundreds of thousands of those in the country.
Yeah. When
you have that many, and you have a few dozen cases of hardness issues. But here's the thing: how many videos, how many times have people said that led to a catastrophic failure or explosion? Even the few times when they say there's an issue, it's things like the trigger pinholes are egging out, or there's a crack at the rear of the receiver. Not good, but we're not talking about guns that are blowing up in people's faces. Right. And there are so many here that there are going to be some, especially with Century and their cost. As we've said for years, there's a couple of easy things you can do. The Zastava guns do seem to, at least historically, be light sprung. Like the recoil spring in the back seems to be a little lighter, maybe because the ammo they're using over there is lighter loaded. Either way, replace it with a I wouldn't even say an extra power spring, just a normal spring. Like in mine, I think I put Polish springs in. That helps a lot. Something else you can do that might help, get rid of the shepherd's crook, the paper clip as Rob calls it, that usually is installed by Century, and put in a retaining plate, which is advice I usually give for any AK.
Yeah.
A few little things like that, and you should be golden. And if people still call BS, you know, Rob's even come out and said it was a good buy. You know, some people, you're not going to convince them. The more you argue, they have it in their heads. So be it. More for us.
I know exactly what would salvage their reputation. A blanket import ban.
Yep. Yeah.
Because when people can't get them, they'll suddenly be the best things ever made.
Yep. And I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Because there aren't. It's not a systemic. It's not a habitual problem. Once in a blue moon, and people. The M92 is a crink. Short gas system guns beat themselves up. That's the whole reason Arsenal had to install the donut in the 104 UR. Because the original 2013 batch, if you didn't cut the barrel down, would beat themselves up. Those types of guns, there's so little dwell time between the gas port and the muzzle. Somebody can get them to run reliably. That's just it. But those kinds of guns, crinks, are not meant for everyday battlefield use. They're meant for special force use. Yeah. So I could definitely see someone wearing out an M92. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. It's a thing. They're good guns. If people don't want to go for it, cool. Yep. They're the same people that didn't want a Wasser years ago, or a Mac 90 or whatever.
Dirty Karate says, "Where the hood at? Thank you." I believe the answer to that question is. Matt Moore says, "Misha and Jay, first hope you gentlemen are well.
Fuck if I know.
I've been so busy with work, I don't." Let me reread that since you're busy shrugging over there. Matt Moore says, "Misha and Jay, first hope you gentlemen are well. I've been busy with work. I don't get the same. I've been so busy with work, I don't get the opportunity to watch your videos the same day they come out. But I'm still around and love the content. Thanks, Matt. Sorry for butchering that, by the way. My topic of interest today. What do you guys think about some of the lending practices, buy now, pay it later, like Cordova in the firearm sales businesses? On the one hand, I feel like options are great for someone seeking to buy a firearm. On the other hand, it really bothers me that some big vendors market that like crazy. I checked out the terms out of curiosity, being a finance guy, and they are terrible. I put them in the same kinds of predatory lending practices like payday loans, insane interest rates. To me, it feels like they are preying on the poor, uneducated, and desperate. On the flip side, though, I take a measured hand to financial regulations because overregulation can often hurt everyone. If someone really needs a firearm and that's their purchase option, then who am I to judge? Curious as to what you gentlemen think. And he also apologized for potential grammatical issues because he's posting on his phone, and Patreon app on phone is terrible. That's fine, because even though you were generally pretty well written there, I still read it horribly.
He did that to help you out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, how is that any different from a credit card or, a furniture loan thing? I mean, at the end of the day, people are responsible for their own decisions.
Yep.
Student loans, I mean, people are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand if the terms are really bad. I've actually used that system myself a few times on guns, but I've always done it knowing that I basically used it as a layaway that I could get the gun immediately instead of having to wait, 90 days to pay it off or whatever. So, and it's helped on a few higher ticket items for me, like, it wasn't the 627 PC, something along those lines. I bought a more performance oriented gun, competition type gun that was a little higher ticket that I didn't want to put on a credit card, so I just did that financing thing so I could get it immediately and start playing with it, and I paid it off before the interest kicked in.
I think even K-Bar does some kind of layaway thing. I don't know. It's the way of the world. Everything does. And let's keep in mind, this isn't medicine or food. The truth is, most gun purchases are a want, not a need.
Yeah.
Now, I get it if you need a gun, like a shotgun, a defensive carry gun.
Yeah. But
beyond that, to some extent, it's a want.
Yeah.
But most things in life really are a want more than a need.
Right.
So, I get we understand where you're coming from, and I agree in principle, preying on people, but at the same time, it's a rough world out there.
Yeah. Justin says, "Hi Misha and Jay. As I understand it, there are quite a few guns that can't be imported into the States due to low availability or bans, and as a result, there are only a few examples in the country. Is there any guns currently not available stateside that you want to have imported and added to your collection? If so, which ones?
Easy. I'm going to say semi, because you can say full auto thing. A Seiko M92 out of Finland, because it's a semi-auto of the RK95. Otherwise, it would be legal. But yeah, they're just not here.
Yeah, I would like to. It would be really cool if I wouldn't necessarily. I'm not saying I would like to see it because of the political implications, but it would be cool if we were still able to get Chinese guns or even just Russian guns again.
Yes, anything.
Because there are some pretty cool. Some pretty cool Chinese firearms that would be neat to have over here that I'd like to see in person or get hands on. But yeah, it's I understand completely why they are currently not.
And of course, there's always the good old chestnuts of a semi-auto L85 or FAMAS. I mean,
yeah,
it's kind of a given, but
right. Japanese.
Oh, good, yeah. That's one
cool.
I've mentioned on lots of, a 64 or an 89. That's one that, even if the U.S. had no laws at all, still wouldn't come because of Japanese law.
Right.
That is just so far beyond the pale.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be...
That'd be something else.
That's my rule. I change it to that. Japanese arms.
They probably would make a FAMAS look cheap.
Yeah. Michael says, "Greetings, gentlemen. What are you hearing about the former Bushmaster ACR? I had read the ACR was not sold with Bushy to Franklin Armory. I contacted the new Remington, Rim Arms, asking if they would produce the ACR again. Their response was, specific to the ACR, the commercial civilian version was branded under the Bushmaster name. Rim Arms does not own the Bushmaster brand. Rim Arms does not expect to produce the ACR in any variant. Your opinions, please. Thank you for this, and keep up the superb content."
Yeah, there always was a very strict division there. Bushmaster was for civilian, maybe a little bit of LE, and Remington was for military, maybe a little bit of international LE sales. The two did not cross. They did not cross the streams. So that doesn't shock me at all. The ACR, it was a good idea 20 years ago. It was already getting dated when it was out. It never was properly supported. In the market, there's so much competition for better guns, more developed guns, I should say.
Yeah.
I don't know where it'd really fit today.
Yeah, it would be cool to have a U.S. ACR, basically. That's not a SCAR. Well, SCAR's not a U.S. either. It's FN. But,
it was made for U.S. SOCOM, so
yeah. But I mean, like an actual internally developed, the ACR made in America.
Yeah, we like it. We've done videos long ago, and it actually impressed us.
An affordable alternative and not Czech alternative to the Bren 2. Like, that would be pretty cool to have if it was properly supported, like the Bren 2, or like the 805 was, or whatever it happens to be. Maybe not like the SCAR, but...
Not for that money.
No. So, it would be nice to have an affordable ACR, active and... But yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that about Bushmaster not going along with Rim Arms.
Yeah, because they're kind of a different sell off.
Makes sense, but that's crazy.
Because different company components were bought by different people and different directions and.
Have a PSA made at Bushmaster ACR.
Yeah, I think because the ACR was never really adopted by military, it just doesn't have that exposure. I mean.
Sure.
And I don't know how much it's in video games these days.
No,
it used to be, and that kind of gave it a little oomph.
The SCAR still is in everything, and the I've actually seen. Well, I see the Scorpion and everything now, but I don't really see the Bren much at all either.
You know, we need. We can kind of look at the same lines. Since we have FB again, a Grot, a semi-auto Grot.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of ACR-ish.
Yeah, that would be cool. Who knows?
I'd be down for that.
Same. Yeah, definitely. Ibrahim says, "Hello guys, and thank you for the fine and great content. Regarding the AK-47 Type 3, is there a correct guide on identifying the date of manufacturing, as most, especially online resources, do not agree with each other? If there isn't any reliable info, what is your input on the subject regarding the dates and the suffix letters on the serial numbers? Presumably the letters represent the date."
The letters typically do not, because of Russian serializing. It was alphanumeric, World War II, and they often randomized the blocks to kind of hide production numbers. That's what I can tell you. But aside from that, you know what I know because the internet. It's not like we have a massive AK Type 3s here we can really study, and the ones we do have are parts kits. And while rewelds are a thing, they weren't a thing for a long time. So a lot of the early imports, the front stubs were thrown away, and a lot of the newer imports, there's no stubs at all. So the sample size is so small, I don't know. And obviously not being able to see, I can't look at pictures. So as much as I would like to know that stuff, it's just not an area that I can ever have expertise in. So I don't know.
Yep. You made a comment about Russians kind of keeping things randomized.
Yeah, so I said they kind of mixed the blocks up because they didn't want, like in World War II, production numbers getting out to the Nazis. Luckily, the Nazis were really helpful the way they serialized everything. That way everyone knew exactly how many they made.
Somebody please take that quote out of context. The Nazis were really helpful. Mishaco.
Well, some of their decisions late in the war were helpful in defeating them.
True.
Yeah, idiot decisions did hasten things.
Yeah. Michael says, thanks for the great content as always, Misha and Jay. Out of curiosity, which underfolder would you folks consider keeping if you could only have one? An Arsenal SAM7 UF underfolder or a Century Arms AK63DS with a stamped receiver? Arsenal also did Arsenal discontinue the original SAM7 UF and replace it with the SAM7 Classic underfolder? It's been a long day, guys.
Yeah. Okay, I can answer the second part easy. No, the SAS M7 Classic has been in their catalog since before the lifting of the assault weapons ban, which was September of 2004. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. You could buy a fixed stock underfolder for all the glorious comfort of an underfolder without the ability to fold it back in 2003. I shit you not. They also did a more modern style, actually a lot like this, that was more of the SAS M7 that had the 90-degree gas block and the lighter weight barrel. So they were produced concurrently here. When it came to imports, the SAS M7 was always a U.S. assembled. The SAS M7 Classic was always assembled here. The SA M7 UF was a Bulgarian import. Again, much like this is an SA M5, but it was this same gun just with an underfolding stock on.
Yeah.
So the one didn't replace the other. They were two rather different lines and rather different price points. Like the UF was half the price of the Classic. As far as keeping, are you kidding? I mean, you're talking about a milled Arsenal import versus a Century Arms on a U.S. receiver and U.S. barrel. There's no contest there.
Yeah.
If it's between those two, keep the Arsenal, sell the Century. I mean, that's not even a thing. That's from a shooting point of view, a collecting point of view, and everything point of view.
Yeah. My answer to that is I only currently have one underfolder, and that's the that Century Polish. What did they call that model?
They call it the AKMS Sporter.
Right, AKMS, right. So I have a Polish AKMS Sporter underfolder. That's the only one I have, and the only reason why I have it is because I'm a Polish collector. If not for that, I wouldn't have an underfolder because I don't like shooting them at all. I
would say my favorite underfolder that's out, and I'm not a big fan of them either, would be the Zastava, the NPAP, ZPAP. It's a nicely tight underfolding stock, and it's just built well, and it's a real import.
The M92 would be a cool underfolder SBR.
That's what I did with mine. I didn't SBR it. I put on an extension, but yeah, I like it more. I just put on a Yugo stock.
Yeah, with a short barrel there, that could actually benefit from having the fairly compact.
Yeah. Second choice would be the Wasser underfolder, but the thing to know there is the old style where it sweeps down more. Some people love it, some people hate it.
I prefer the Polish.
Yeah, that's why I put the Zastava ahead, because it has the newer AKMS. Plus, that style locks on both sides, whereas the Wasser 10 uses the original AK Type 3 style that only locks on one side, so it's not going to be as strong.
Yeah. Well, we are out of questions for this Q&A.
Well, guys, appreciate you questioning in, and hasn't been a whole lot new to talk about, but we have covered quite a few guns that just came out. Some videos will probably be up before this one, some after. Finally, stuff is starting to move, but it's still a tight market out there, and my advice is if you can hold off buying, do so. Let prices settle in.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with ammo. Don't overpay if you don't have to.
This coming from a person, by the way, who makes a living selling guns.
Yeah,
hold off on buying guns right now.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, because no one and the dealers aren't the ones. By now, the distributors are all, so the dealers are making the same money they pretty much always made. Mm-hmm. So I just assume people not overpay.
Right.
It's not going into my pocket, even if it was. Being serious, because I like repeat customers, and that's not a good way to do it when they overpay.
Well, and at the end of the day, you're a customer too. So
yep.
And it sucks for us not being able to shoot as much because we're looking at $1 a round for 223 if we want to replenish our stocks. Mm-hmm. And even if you do go out and shoot 22 center round 223 that you bought already, not knowing you can't get it, there's a weird guilty sense to me of shooting. Even though I love shooting, it's a big stress reliever for me. So it'll stabilize. I think it'll get better at some point, but it won't if people are still panic buying everything.
Yep. And
so
the ammo makers are manufacturing and guns are coming in as imports. Yep. I mean, there was a little bit of a snafu last September, October when the ATF they weren't denying, they just weren't approving forms, but it seems like come November they kind of got back to approving forms. So stuff is coming in.
Right.
And some new stuff is due in later this season and early summer, so.
Right.
Let's hope it makes it, guys, and then hopefully we will all have more to talk about.
Yeah.
It's really boring.
In the meantime, well, I mean, one of the nice things is that it has forced us, and I'll talk about this in a video that I'll be working on in the next few weeks. It's forced us not having new things to talk about. It's almost easy to talk about new things because it's new. Mm-hmm. You don't have to really think through too much because everything you're going off of is an initial impression. But when things aren't coming in, we have to go back and look at things we already have and try to think about them in different ways to try to make something out of that. And I think to that end, it's probably more creative of a process. It's certainly, I like the engagement with the hobby in such a way that I have to think through it.
And I think we've always done okay with that. I mean, there's an entire section called retrospectives because most of the guns you see here are ours. There are some loaners, but most of them are ours. And the only time we usually get rid of one is if there's either something even better that came along or we need to sell it to fund something else. But by and large, we keep. So, we can revisit a year later, 2 years later, heck, 5 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, we did videos on the Archer in 2013. It's still here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's been one of the, I think one of the benefits. The negative of it is that we have to come up with ideas for videos, and sometimes, depending on what's going on, it can be difficult to get those gears turning. So, we definitely can use downtime here and there.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk more about old bolt actions and old pistols, but there's not a whole lot of a market for that, not a whole lot of views, and it's kind of hard to spend a day doing a video and get 1,000 views. But we are appreciative to those who do view, but I do wish a lot more of you would give old guns a chance because they're a lot deeper and more interesting than you give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Not everything needs to be an AR and AK.
Yeah, or even grandpa guns like revolvers and...
Yeah, we're losing you to that one.
Break actions and single shots and all that stuff can be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're definitely
that double barrel we did a year or two ago was the Joe Biden gun.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun actually.
They're not as sexy as semi-auto AKs, but they're also still fun to shoot. In fact, I shot a lever action 22 yesterday.
I was about to say, I love lever actions are just fun to manipulate.
I was shooting that thing at 100 yards at a 6-inch steel plate and was hitting it with every shot. And in 22 LR and pouring rain with that lever action, and it was a lot of fun. Like that was, I was having almost as much fun shooting that as I was the PE90 that same day, which is... those guns are great for that, but I knew if I did a video on it, it would have 600 views in the first 24 hours. So they're just not very popular, which is fine. When we make videos, we want to make regardless. You know, so.
And we do like making AK videos. We will have or have had quite a few lately, but sometimes there's just kind of a drought in AKs. Last year, up until the end of last year, there was no new AKs to talk about, and ARs. It's not really our forte. Retro ARs, maybe a little more, but yeah, well, there's not much you can say about an AR, unfortunately.
Yep. But
Oh, sure, there's new FALs. I love FALs, but
yeah,
it's just not that the 308 7.62 NATO community in general has been pretty quiet for years.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, anything else to cover?
I think we did. Again, as we said at the beginning, a buck and up a month Patreon donation. You can ask as many questions, and we try to meet up because of a few issues. It's taken us a little while to do this one. First, a few things on my end, then his end, and my end again. So, but we do always get to them, and yeah, $5 you can ask a video make, and $10 you can contact either of us directly if you have a question. Yeah. And that's about it. But we're keeping on, and trying to hopefully come up with something interesting.
Yeah.
Still doing the gun thing, and with spring coming on, hopefully there will be nicer weather for it. Alrighty, guys. As always, if you could like, share, and subscribe.
Yep.
This is Misha.
This is Jay.
And we'll both catch you soon next time.
Bye, y'all.